That being said, ladies and gentlemen, time to move ahead with another feisty topic coming your way. We have a fireside chat lined up. This is where we're talking about turning goals into opportunities, advanced sustainability as a business imperative. And we'd like to invite both of our speakers here. First up to spearhead the session, we have with us Rajesh Parameshwaran, Executive Director and Industrial Sector Leader, IBM Consulting. And may we please invite Mr. Satish Pai, Managing Director, Hindalco Industries. Can we have a huge, huge round of applause to welcome two pioneering leaders, Mr. Rajesh Parameshwaran and Mr. Satish Pai.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I have great pleasure in having this conversation. During the day, we all heard and talked about what organizations want to do, what they want to achieve. Here, I have the pleasure of sitting with someone who has actually done and achieved. So, Hindalco is the only aluminum company in the world to be in the the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for 2 consecutive years, right? And that's a phenomenal achievement coming on from an Indian company. With the constraints that we work. So just want to get some views from you as to how did you chart this journey? What has your journey been like?
So I think that, compared to many of the other speakers that you will come across, we are what we say a hard-to-abate sector. And that's because, aluminium, actually when you buy a ton of aluminium, half of what you buy is power. Yeah. So it's a very power intensive. So I think that, if you're going to make a dent in the carbon emissions, then the hard-to-abate sectors have to take a leading role. The rest of the guys, all your efforts are very valuable, but when you actually do the math, if you have to meaningfully, it's then the cement, aluminium, steel, these are the sectors that have to move ahead. So I think we were very conscious right from the beginning that, I tend to go and present a lot, and the brickbats that are thrown at me is you come from India and 90% of your power is coal. And I get that quite often, and that's why the first message I wanted to tell is every time we talk about sustainability, we seem to then just come down to carbon emissions. Let me tell you that whether it's the Dow Jones, whether it's Sustainalytics, whether it's MSCI, sustainability is a lot more than just carbon emissions. Because if it was just carbon emissions, we would not have been ranked number 1.
Yeah, exactly.
And what you have to realize is that companies like us in India, where we rank and do much better than most Western companies, is on zero water discharge, waste going to landfill, improvement in biodiversity, the S part of ESG. So this is where the Aditya Birla Group and Hindalco, when they see the amount of efforts we have put in, we rank much higher than an Alcoa, Norsk Hydro, and many of these other companies. The weak part for us in India is our power source. So I think that's the first, you have to put that on the table and yes. You can't dance around it, that 90% of the power in India comes from coal. And hence, when it comes to carbon emissions, this is where we have practically the biggest challenge. And of course, companies like us have got, we have committed to net zero.
Yes.
And I try to remind people that net zero doesn't mean zero emissions. Correct. It means that you will have emissions and you would have offsets to make it a net zero. Yeah. So some more misconceptions to clear off. But we have quite a lot of efforts, and actually I'm here today because one of our partners is Greenco, and we are working on many alternatives to get different sources of power than coal. So as a combination of all our efforts, including carbon emissions, okay. That's how we have been ranked as number 1.
That's really great to know.
Yeah.
So, and how do you manage the governance mechanisms within the organization to really monitor, supervise, the goals that you've set for yourself?
So if you take any organization today, you will find that the senior management, let's say they're all committed to sustainability yes. targets. Yes. And what you will find is that most of your new employees, the younger ones who are joining, are actually passionately converted to. And then you have a whole bunch of middle management who are saying this seems to be quite an expensive exercise and is it really worth it? So I think that some part of management is convincing. And I was quite happy to see that everyone thinks everyone's convinced, but I'm telling you, it's not that easy, because once you have to pay for it,
Yes.
people don't seem to want that green product very often. But what we have done is we have put KRAs. So we have put it into the annual bonus plans of, including mine.
Okay.
So we have safety and sustainability related targets
Okay.
in the bonus plans of the management and the employees.
That's quite
So
interesting.
it's okay to be convinced, but we want to make sure that when your money is on the line,
Skin is in the
you will
game.
probably be a bit more committed.
Okay. But so you talked about, cost and, how do you draw out efficiencies? So getting green, initiating sustainability goals and then getting that into the, mix, while it's good to talk about it, the investments that are required, the capex that is required is quite high in the initial stages.
Yes.
So how do you balance that with respect to the efficiencies and the benefits that you can reap through over a period of time? Like, for example, you talk about, bringing in growth or bringing in products which are more sustainable, and there would be a market, but that's a futuristic, view. So how do you hedge the bets between investment and creating efficiencies?
So let me break it into two bits. Recycling
Yeah.
and the circular economy actually makes a lot of economic sense.
Correct.
So our subsidiary Novelis has been for the last 20 years the biggest aluminum
Yes.
recycler. 20 years ago, nobody talked about ESG.
Yes.
But we did recycling because getting metal back at a discount to the original price and reusing it makes a lot of
Makes
economic
sense.
sense. So I think that when sustainability and economics aligns,
Yeah.
then, so I am actually on the recycling bit and the circular economy, extremely confident that people will recycle more and more.
Okay.
Because there is a lot of economic
Yes.
sense behind it. Where it gets difficult is that when you get into all the investments you have to make, whether it's in green hydrogen or other types of green energy sources, which are, let's say, economically much more expensive
Right.
than your current ones. So that, I think, that is where your commitment to and what you believe in as a company comes in.
Right.
And we have been pointing that out in the Western world, that most of my Western competitors had hydropower that God gave them 100 years ago.
Yes.
And they have not had to invest a single paisa to make that power green.
Right.
Where companies like Hindalco are investing in solar, wind,
Yes.
pumped hydro, and spending money. And hence, instead of a carbon border adjustment tax, I should be given credits because we are actually spending money to reduce carbon.
Right.
So it is an expense.
Yeah.
My investors asked me about the return on that investment. And actually, I have a very simple answer that I think 5, 10, 15 years from now, license to operate will be companies that are green.
That's a very important point,
Yes.
actually. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. But again, so the short term versus the long term, the balancing, right, that you
Yes.
got to do with respect to the market, that would be a big challenge to kind of handle
It is.
in the immediate
It is.
space, right?
Yes.
So how does innovation come into all of this in terms of how do you leverage emerging technologies? How do you use innovation to ensure that you bring out products and services which are more sustainable or, which use a lot of the circularity that you talked about?
So I think one thing that people need to realize is that the transition to green energy, the transition to getting into a more sustainable circular economy is going to take time.
Yeah.
It's not a step change.
Correct.
So it's not that you're going to wake up tomorrow and everything is
Right.
fixed. Now, once you buy that, the second thing I think that the previous speaker spoke about, you have to experiment and do a lot of pilots, because today it's unclear which one of the so-called things that people are saying is the next greatest thing is
Yeah.
actually going to work. So is
Right.
green hydrogen going to work? Is carbon capture and utilization going to work? Is pumped hydro going to work?
Yeah.
So what approach we have taken is to do as many pilots as we can.
Right.
And we are hoping that with the pilots, the company that is evangelizing the technology as well as us as the user
Yeah.
will learn and actually figure out, because without some big technology breakthrough,
Yeah.
there is no way I can see India turning into a green energy source country.
Correct.
90% of our energy comes from coal.
Coal.
We don't have natural
Absolutely.
gas.
absolutely.
right? And water is a scarcity here.
Yes.
So it's not that you can build lots and lots of hydroelectric dams all
Right,
over the rivers. The
right.
NGOs will kill you.
Right.
So I think that for us, we need this technology breakthrough.
So you talked about coal, right? Now, is that also an opportunity for Hindalco, considering that, the country is moving from coal to electricity, and anything electric requires a lot of aluminum parts to it, and, automatically becomes a market.
So look, you said coal to electricity. So first part, yes, the more you electrify, the more
Yeah.
aluminium you will
Yes.
use, and it's great for my business.
Yes.
But let me tell you, most of the electric cars in India will still run on power that is being
Run
generated
by coal.
coal.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you have to solve that battery problem.
Yes.
You have to solve that storage problem.
Right.
People are here in Delhi. You had a very hot summer.
Yeah.
And then you started to worry about power cuts.
Yes.
You did not ask the government for more solar power at that time. What you did was divert all the coal from the industry to the power plants in the north.
And have more
And
generators.
what has happened today, coal prices in India are at international prices. It's double or triple. So electrification reduces emissions in the city, but the source of the electricity has to come from solar or wind with storage.
Right.
Otherwise, you cannot solve the country's electricity problem.
Right.
So I think that the electrification has to be balanced with where your electricity comes from.
Correct.
Otherwise, what you will do is increase the electricity demand, and if you don't have sources, then you will use more coal.
More coal. Yeah.
So whether it's Germany, whether it's Japan or India,
Right.
you have announced more coal power plants.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're importing more coal
Yeah.
as well, right? Now, again, when you, as the economy grows and there is more products and services coming in, we see the metals and minerals, the growth demand is going up big time. There's a huge acceleration in that space. Now, what that also means is you're also in an industry which actually works on the, margins of communities which are impacted by
yes.
deforestation, all of the other natural elements which are very close to a lot of communities. And obviously, you also become soft targets to kind of chase. How do you balance this, which is the S of the ESG, where you talk about social and communities?
It's a very good question. If you want more electrification, you need more lithium-ion batteries until
Right.
some new technology comes.
Right.
So you need lithium, you need cobalt, you need, by the way, the cathodes are
Exactly.
copper and aluminium. So the electrification drive will drive up the demand for metals.
Yes.
And unfortunately or fortunately, there's no other way out. You have to mine them.
Yes.
And then you have to smelt or refine them to get it. So I think that there is no way out that you are going to have to do mining.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why Hindalco became #1 in the sustainability index is because we have come out with a sustainable mining charter.
Right.
So it is possible to mine in a responsible manner.
Right.
And I think that in India, that is the only way mining will be acceptable to the communities and tribals who live around there.
Right.
I don't think the old way of rape and pillage will work.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So you will have to do, and I think that we have quite a good system, and the government has also got quite a lot of policies and procedures put down.
Right.
Now, I think it's important for industry, the mining industry,
Yes.
to follow those policies and procedures, not just for legal compliance, but for actually
implement.
doing it the right way.
Right.
And it can be done.
Yeah.
I mean, we have mines where after the mine is finished, we have left
Return it back.
with a garden or a jungle at the top, completely reclaimed.
Yeah.
And there is enough examples in the world. But it costs money, and you have
Yes.
to plan it well in advance.
Right.
And it can be done. So I don't think we should think that, otherwise you will not have growth,
Right.
and you will not have electrification.
Correct, absolutely. I think more power to you, and may you continue to kind of lead, and with the power of your voice and the leadership that you have in this segment, I'm sure, things will gradually improve in terms of how we look at this entire mix and not just have, sustainability as a, nice to have badge, but really yield results.
Yes.
But I think the takeaway for me in this conversation is what you mentioned about the license to do business.
Yes.
Right? I think that's a very powerful, statements where you're saying that being sustainable is actually
A license to
license to operate, right?
Yes.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Satish.
Thank you.
Thanks for